Thanks for joining us here at Thrive Church. We are a church passionate about moving people towards Jesus. For more information, go to our website, www.thrivechurch.co.za.
So the first incredible lady that I get to have a conversation with this evening is Rhoda Vary. Thank you for joining us this evening. Appreciate it. Yeah, anytime. Rhoda has quite a story for us this evening, but I want to say thank you, Rhoda. What you don't know is Rhoda's been pretty ill this whole week, and we weren't really sure she was even going to make it. So I thank you for being so courageous. The whole week I kept saying, you don't have to be here, you don't have to be here. It's okay, we'll be okay. And she's like, I will be there. So you need to know that. Let's fill you in on Rhoda's story. So Rhoda, you've battled with your health for quite some time. Would you guys pop that on for Rhoda? Thanks. But really, your health problems came to a head in April 2017. When you found yourself, and I'm going to read this just so that you can hear how significant a health issue Rhoda found herself in multiple organ failure. Following a recovery from shingles and a kidney infection, you found yourself in hospital with, listen, hepatitis of the liver, yellow jaundice, German measles, pleurisy, and pneumonia on the lungs, a kidney infection, and a leaking heart valve. Literally, everything was shutting down. And the diagnosis came back that you had been diagnosed with lupus.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit more about lupus for those of us who don't know much about it?
Okay. So, lupus is an autoimmune disease. It's a disease where your autoimmune system attacks healthy tissue and organs within your body. And with lupus, it can become much more complicated in that it can progress with overlap into additional autoimmune diseases.
And can lupus be cured?
No, there is no cure for lupus. And sadly, lupus is one of the diseases that they indicate is probably the most unique in human diseases known. And the reason for that is that there are so many symptoms that overlap or are similar to MS or leukemia or any other critical disease.
So you found yourself being diagnosed. What you need to know is Rhoda was pretty ill all the time leading up, but the diagnosis only came in 2017.
Correct.
So you found yourself with lupus, but lupus is accompanied by something called neuropathy.
Correct.
And so I would like you to explain to everybody what neuropathy is and how it affected your working situation.
Okay. So lupus causes inflammation in your joints, in your muscles, in your organs. And this also includes your nervous system and your muscular system. So the overlap with neuropathy is where the inflammation causes nerve damage and regeneration of the nerves. So my current situation with neuropathy on my left hand is early paralysis of the sensory nerve, and I have no feeling and difficulty in movement of my forefingers.
Yeah. And cognitively?
There is cognitive degeneration. It affects my speech. There are mornings when I wake up and my tongue is stuck to my palate and I'm literally speaking as if I'm disabled. It's slurred, it's staggered, but also simple words don't come to mind, like the word the or they, for example. I would also start a sentence and be totally lost as to what the conversation was.
Wow. Yeah. And so what type of effect did this have on your work, and what did that result in?
Okay. So the effect was devastating for me, having been in the corporate world for 26 years and having reached the pinnacle of where I wanted to be in my career. And I finally got there, and it was like 2 years prior to the lupus diagnosis. But it affected me in that lupus drains you physically with fatigue. So you are tired 24/7, and no amount of sleep that you have takes that tiredness away. In addition to that, you have muscle and joint pain all day, all night.
Which is very draining.
It's extremely draining. And that pain is, at some days, so debilitating that I cannot get out of bed. I can't do simple things like wash my hair, blow dry, brush my teeth, put on my bra, because everything is just aching, everything is just sore. And the difficulty of that is that there's limitations. And it's limitations that I did not have. And that meant adjustment in my life. And I had to weigh up what was more important. The success of my career, keeping my career while juggling the effects of lupus, and how it affected our home and the lives of Alistair and Taryn and myself, or whether I needed to look at success versus significance. And I chose significance. And I made the tough decision in March of this year to apply for disability leave. And God's goodness and His grace and His mercy abounded so much in that the process normally takes 4 to 6 months, and mine's got approved. I submitted the paperwork end of Feb, and end of March it was approved.
So talk us through that, being a career woman. You said 26 years to get to the place where you finally wanted to be. You've just got into that space. And then you find yourself having to make the choice of choosing disability and being boarded. What does that do for you in your significance? How do you process that? Because, unfortunately, we form our identities by what we do.
Correct. That was the most challenging part, Pastor Ken, is that what I thought defined me was not what defined me at all. And I thought my career, being a working mom, being available for my daughter, juggling all of that made me successful, made me who I was. And when I lost that, I felt stripped of everything that I thought made me who I am. I was broken, I was depressed, I was just sad within my heart as to how did I get here. But I felt as if I had disappointed. I had disappointed my family, I had disappointed Taryn, because, your kids look at you, and sometimes they look at you and say, one day, that's who I want to be. And I remember Taryn, when she first started grade 1, she said to me, Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be you. I want to have your job. I want to be able to do the things that you do. And here I was at the age of 46, and I had to walk away from my work. And I had to find a new definition of what made me significant. And I found that what made me significant was sharing my story. It was encouraging others. It was putting on a brave face. I often say, when everybody asks, or tell me, you look so strong, or you look good. Most lupus patients hate it when we are told we are looking good. And the reason for that is that outwardly, we look normal. And the chaos and the devastation of what the disease is doing to us is happening invisibly inside of us, And most days when you get a hug, you are so reluctant to tell everybody, please don't squeeze too hard, because every bone in your body is sore all the time. And where I was sharing that and showing a different strength, because I could not be strong in that I knew my body was weak. It told me that it reflected in every aspect of my daily life. So I had to find a way, and that was to come before God at his altar and ask him, I can't be strong, but I need you to enable me, that I can be courageous, and that I can be bold, and I can be brave. And if I can do those three things, then I am strong.
Yeah, just give her a hand. I want to say that I know for sure that your daughter would say that she still wants to be like you. I want to say that I have seen the most amazing beauty and growth and development in your family over the past 2 years. There is just something so beautiful about what God is doing in your family and through your family, that it's actually, I've never seen it look more beautiful. So how is it that you are living in this daily? Just, for people, because I think everybody would want our circumstances to change. But if our circumstances can't, how do you have strength in the moment? How do you have courage? What do you use to help you when your circumstances can't change unless God does an absolute miracle? And of course, we're always trusting. We're always believing. We're always going to have faith. But God is sovereign and he gets to choose. But how do you live in the moment? Let's encourage ladies who might be going through things that can't be changed.
I think to start off, I would say that when you're diagnosed with a disease that you know has no cure, and you know inevitably the outcome is going to be death, you need to sit back and you need to reflect as to how are you going to live. Are you going to live as God asks us to live in the Bible? For the day, for the moment, for the hour. And that is what we've been doing the past 2 years, is we've been living day by day. We don't make plans. We've got no future endeavors mapped out like we would have had. We are joyful just to have each day, to come home to each other, to share laughter, to be able to talk about our day. I know my husband's face when he walks into the house, the first thing he looks for is whether I'm smiling. And if there's a smile on my face, I can see the change on his face. And when he sees me flat in bed, his whole demeanor changes. And you can see the heavy burden that's on him. And we sat down, and as a family, we had to be intentional as to how we were going to manage this disease and the reality of it. And that was to be just completely open to know that God has a purpose and a plan in this. He said in the book of Psalms that before we were born, he formed us in our mother's womb. He named us. He wrote our names in the Lamb Book of Life. He numbered those days. He called us by name. So that means he has a plan. So we've got to live out that plan and live that out with joy. And it's difficult. It's difficult to be able to be brave and to show that joy. But when you know Christ as your personal Savior, it's not impossible. Because there is so much that he gives us as a family. I know when Taryn woke up one Monday morning and she said to me, Mom, I've been thinking about an initiative I want to start at school. And she stepped up and she approached her deputy principal and said that my mom is lupus and I'm a victim of the situation, but I want to be able to have a platform to educate and to bring awareness about lupus to the school. She went on further to share that with a kindred friend of hers, Jade, and they shared about their personal experience over 3 assemblies, which was 3 days. And over their 3 days, funds was raised for the Lupus Foundation of South Africa. And now they're appointed as ambassadors for the Lupus Foundation of South Africa.
Thanks, everybody. All right, the next wonderful lady that I will be inviting up onto the platform, she's part of our Thrive staff team. And to be honest, she is the backbone of our admin staff. Without her, nothing would be here. Thank you, Lizzie. We love Lizzie. Like I said, we would crumble without her, literally. All right, so this is a difficult conversation for Liz to have. Just over a month ago now, on the 29th of June, on a Saturday, Liz had a devastating call at 2 a.m. in the morning to say that her aunt, who lived in Zimbabwe, had passed away in a car accident. She was in a car accident where all the other passengers, the 2 cars, came out with just scratches and bruises, but her aunt passed away tragically. She leaves behind 2 children, her aunt. And as Liz received this sudden news, grief immediately became her companion. So Lizzie, thank you for being brave enough to being interviewed on this only a month after. But talk to us, Liz, about some of the stages of grief that you've encountered in the last month.
Okay. So the first time that I heard the message that my aunt died, I went through a process of denial. I think as I went to Zimbabwe all the way, I thought someone would call me and tell me that it wasn't true. So I just comforted myself and told myself that it's better that I go. Someone is going to tell me that she's still alive and it was a mistake. And then I went through the motions. I was in shock of the burial and the body viewing. And it was only when I came back here that I started really processing what had happened. So at first I was so angry. I was angry at God because she was only 44 and we were very close and she was young. And I felt like God is able. He is God. And he had just decided to take her. And it didn't make sense to me. So I was very angry at God because he could do it. He could have saved it, and he didn't. And then I was angry at my aunt because I thought she had decided in her own way to die at 44, leaving kids behind. And I wondered in her last moments if she had at all cried out to God for help and if God had listened or not listened. And I wondered also if she had thought about her kids who she was leaving behind. And I was so angry. Like I felt like she had just decided to give up because, as Pastor Ken said, all 4 people who were in the cars, they came out with scratches. No one had to sleep in hospital, but she was beyond recognition. And so there was so much anger in me. And then...
Can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
In our staff meeting, Liz says, I was so angry I wasn't going to come back to church. And then I realized I worked there. I was so grateful she worked here.
And then I went through a process of self-condemnation because when you are a Christian, you know the right words. You are expected to give hope in situations like this. And I just didn't have the words to say. And when my aunt's son, who is 11, came to me and kept on asking, so is my mom not coming back? I didn't have anything to say to him. So for a while, I carried that with me. I could have given him hope, and I missed that moment. So there was that self-condemning that I am a Christian, and yet I was so broken not to be able to give hope.
I just want to stop you for a moment. I think just as women in general, we're very harsh on ourselves. You know, you're processing your own grief and your own emotion and your own tragedy, and then you're thinking, I should have done more for somebody else. And so you just need to give yourself some grace. You know, we're gracious to everybody else except to ourselves, you know, in situations. Lizzie, I think one of the predominant things that you felt was worry in this situation. Worry about what's going to happen to these two children. How is your family going to get involved? Talk me through that and how you managed to navigate that worry, the fear.
So in the moments when I worried, I just decided that I needed to Google a scripture that would help me through my worry. And I just want to share it with you. Luke 12, verse 25 to 26 says, "Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest?" So it seemed kind of harsh, but I think I needed God to be real with me, and that's what He did. Like, my worrying wasn't going to add a single life to my life, and I had to believe that God would still come through for us as a family and for those kids in like a situation like this.
Thanks, Lizzie. So, in our staff meeting, Liz shared that there's 3 things that she learnt out of grief and out of grieving that have helped her and that she believes will help others. If we look towards others who might be grieving, these are some of the things that we could put in place and some of the practices that we could put in place to actually help those who are grieving. So Lizzie's going to share them with us.
The first thing that I learned is that it is very important to have someone to just listen to you. Like, at times I felt like I had no one to talk to, and until someone sat me down and listened to everything that I needed to say to my aunt. So that's the most important thing that I learned, that you need people to just listen and not say anything back. Sometimes I think as Christians we have prepared speeches, and I just want to encourage you that sometimes the best thing you can do for a person who is grieving is just to sit there and listen while they talk about it.
Yeah, and I think sometimes our prepared speeches are
intimidating.
Yeah, they're intimidating and they're meaningless. It's not what the people need in that moment, right? People just need an ear. Tell everybody about the person they sat you down and said, just speak.
Yes. So one of my friends asked, just take me out and said, let's have the conversation. And I just talked about my aunt, about her life, about how much I knew her. And it's all I wanted, for someone to just listen while I said it. Made me feel...
There's healing in that moment, right?
Yes, there is healing. Yeah. And the second thing that I learned was in the power of prayer. So when I came back, I was so broken and so heavy in my heart that I couldn't even open my mouth to say anything to God. Like, most of the times I felt like I just wanted him to crawl into a hole and wallow in my grief. And I felt like when you feel like someone has taken your heart, broken it into tiny pieces and put a heavy stone on top, that's what I was carrying in. And in one of our afternoon prayers that we do as staff at 12 p.m., Pastor Ken just asked if they could pray for us. And in that moment, I felt something lift from my heart. And in that moment, I knew I was going to be okay. As she said, I had been on the verge where I was withdrawing from God. Everything about God was intimidating to me. And if I didn't work at the church, as I said, I wouldn't have been here. And it humbled me to think that if I had had this conversation before my aunt died, it would be a different one. And I was so humbled to know, to just learn how it is to get to a place when you can say, I don't want to do anything. I don't want anything to do with God after I've known him all my life. It is that easy. And in that moment, when they prayed for me, the Holy Spirit, I just felt something lift, and I knew I was going to be okay. And there is power in prayer.
Yeah,
And I know it doesn't change my situation. My aunt is still dead, but it's good to know that there is someone who helps you and who walks with you. And I felt that God was with me after that prayer.
Yeah. I want to just comment on that because in that meeting, you could just see the weight on Liz's shoulders. Like it was just tangible. And I just said, guys, we need to go around Liz and just pray for her. And sorry, Liz. We have the most amazing team. They just rallied around her, and Liz just wept, and our team just prayed life and healing and wholeness. And it was like everybody left having lifted the burden off Lizzie's shoulders, or just helping to in a small way. Like she says, you know, the circumstances don't change, right? But we get to lift each other's burdens. I mean, that's the point of doing life together, right? I mean, why let somebody be in your presence and in your environment suffering and struggling when you can help lift a burden, when you can carry their arms for them? Okay, point 3.
The third thing that I learned was the power of hope. So I had people sending me messages and people giving me hugs and just giving me words of encouragement. And I just want to encourage you, like, I thought I didn't need the hope. Like, I was so intimidated by everyone when they said words of encouragement to me. But then I found out that I really needed that hope. And people pursued me with a passion. If they hadn't pursued me, I wouldn't be giving this testimony. And I knew the power of hope, because when I would lie at night alone, I would think about each and every word that had been said. And in my head, I was fighting each word, fighting with God, because I thought there was no way God was going to talk his way out of this one, because my aunt was not coming back. But I learned the power of hope, and I learned that you need people to be in your face with the word of God. You need people to pursue you. Isaiah 41:13 says, "For I am the Lord your God, who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, do not fear, I will help you." But the thing is, like, you need community to get to a place where you can hold out your hand to say, God, help me. If I didn't have that community, I wouldn't have opened my hand for God to help me.
Come on, let's give her a hand. Huge. Do you see what I mean? Like, we are literally in holy space here. This next amazing lady that we get to have a conversation with this evening is from our Edenvale campus. And she has been in Edenvale Church for the past 18 years. I said to her she's had a long obedience in the same direction. Welcome, Sammy. It's a bit awkward. I can't hug you because I have 2 mics and... Oh, welcome. Awesome. Thanks for joining me. All right. I really have come to love you. I don't just say that. I love your heart. I love your passion for God. Sammy, when we're speaking on the phone about this today, you mentioned to me that you had quite a dysfunctional and an unhealthy childhood growing up. Let's put the ladies in a bit of the picture, and would you just explain some of how you grew up, what your childhood was like?
Okay, so I grew up in a home with an alcoholic father. He used to beat us. He beat my mom, all of us kids. He was constantly drunk, but he was actually diagnosed as a psychopath. because he used to literally beat everything up. He wasn't one of those coward men that beats up his wife, but when he comes across a man, then he like cowards. He like literally would, he had a nickname in Durban called Dutchie, and the bars would phone and say, Dutchie's done it again, and then they would send out like 6 police vans to go and fetch him. So he was seriously cray-cray, and but yeah, so like we grew up with intense beatings. When I say intense beatings, I'm talking about like my brother's head being flushed down the toilet and having cuts all over his face. The last time my father beat any of us, he actually beat me, and he went to prison for 6 months. But we were sitting around a table. We didn't have TV very often. We had TV 2 days of the month. The rest of the time it was in the pawn shop. So, because you would buy booze. And so we were sitting around the dinner table playing noughts and crosses and join the dots and all those things. And so it was my mom and my older brother, my sister and my dad, and then I was sitting there by myself. And I grabbed the pen out of my sister's hand and I said, it's my turn to play with Daddy now. And he sent me to the room. And he came into the room and he started beating me. He was strangling me. All I can remember is seeing the ceiling and then the floor and then the wall and then the other wall and the ceiling and the floor. And actually this week was the first time my sister and I had ever spoken about it. And she said all she can remember is the gurgling sounds I was making as my dad was strangling me. So that was intense, actually, to hear it from her side. I was like, oh, that was bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, no child should have to go through that.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
obviously, I mean, it goes without saying that you take your pain, you take everything you've been through in your childhood, which was intense, I mean, on another level, into your teenage years.
Absolutely.
And you take it there, and you take your brokenness with you.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, it evolves and it spirals completely out of control.
Yeah.
Talk us into your teenage years and like even early adult years. Talk us about what happened. How did that brokenness of your childhood, perpetuate right through?
Yeah. So I actually also forgot to mention now that when I was 7, my dad's best friend molested me. And we actually lost that court case because my dad beat him within like centimeters of his life. So it was like, I can touch my kids, but you can't. And then after he had beat me and he'd left, my mom married my stepdad. And that was 2 months literally, and she was remarried. And he started beating her on the night, their wedding night. He actually beat her the first time. And he tried to hit me once, and I said to him that if you touch me again, I'll have you locked up. So he never tried to hit me again, but he would call me a slut and a whore and excuse my language.
It's a coffee conversation between...
I'm being vulnerable, okay?
between two friends. It's all good.
But all, like terrible, terrible names. And then when I was in standard 5, I was gang raped by a group of boys. And then when I was 16, I was raped again. But by that time, at the age of 12, I already started running around. I was jolling, I was in nightclubs, never got bounced, passing out, drunk, sleeping around. I found myself in some terrible, terrible situations, And
fast forward to matric.
Yes.
Yes.
So when I was 16 years old, I was in matric for like a week. And I said to my mom, that's it, I couldn't take it anymore. So I said, I'm leaving home. And at that time, I'd already run away from home 3 times, slept on the Benoni mine dump for a week, was taken care of by a bunch of Rastafarians, smoked a lot of weed.
Which back then wasn't legal, right?
No. But anyway, so I I decided I was going to look in the newspaper. And I started looking for a job in the newspaper, and there was this advertisement that said, career woman. So I was like, that sounds cool, I'm a career woman. And it said accommodation provided and everything. And I was like, this is my ticket out of here. Yeah. And I phoned, and the guy's like, well, we have 2 positions available. So I was like, okay. So he's like, well, the one is for a prostitute. And I was like, well, I could never do that. And he said, and the second one was for a receptionist. Yeah. So I was like, I'm in, I'm taking it, I'm out of here, I'm packing my bags and I'm going. And so anyway, I went there, and in front of me there was like this massive, not that big, but big 24-hour porn TV just playing in front of me constantly over and over again, and guys coming in, booking, ladies stripping, you know, that kind of stuff. And I was 16 years old, and the owners said to me said to the guy, because they all wanted the young, fresh girl, yeah. And he protected me strangely enough. I think he had other plans. But eventually I gave in and did a strip show. So like I was 16 years old and basically doing a live strip sex show on stage in front of a group of bachelors.
Stop you for a moment, just let you catch your breath. I want to say, you know, we're so quick to judge people. We're so quick to say, well, look at what they're doing, right? But when you look at the backstory to how a person ends up, like, I mean, your story, Sam, how you end up, you almost had no options.
Absolutely.
You know, there wasn't a safe home for you. You didn't have a way to make an income. So when you see something that says, hey, there's accommodation, there's food, you know, there's peace. You're like, great, I don't have to sleep on a mine dump. And so you make that decision not knowing, you know, where this may lead.
Absolutely. You know, and the ladies, even though they don't really trust each other, you feel like you belong somewhere. You know, you feel like you have a place. You can go to sleep at night and not worry about someone screaming or shouting and things like that. And, you know, like any moms, if you have rebellious girls or boys that are not doing what they're supposed to do, check yourselves and check your home and ask yourselves, do they have a place where they belong?
Yeah, that's powerful. So, obviously, after your first strip show, how does it progress?
Yeah, so then my sister's a nail technician, and she was like, come and stay with me. And I was like, fine, you know, because I got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. And I went with her, but we were all broken. We were all messed up, and she was very aggressive. We would, you know, go out, and she would beat me up. And so eventually there was this lady working with me. It was about 3 months or 4 months, and I wasn't 17 yet. She obviously saw the vulnerability in me. She saw the brokenness in me. And at the time, I thought she was such a nice lady. And anyway, so she's like, why don't you come to Cape Town with me? You're just going to dance. You don't have to worry about anything else. There will just be dancing. And, you know, let's just go make a new life. And so I immediately thought, well,
it's hope.
Score.
Yeah. It's a lifeline. Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, so when we got to Cape Town, there was no dancing involved whatsoever and just prostitution. And so I found myself stuck in Cape Town, no money, no friends, no family, no nothing, just these people. And after a week, she left, and she's like, well, my boyfriend wants me back, so I'm going back. So
you were stuck in Cape
I was
Town.
stuck in Cape Town. And it wasn't until much later when I actually, you know, joined Cherish that I realized that I'd actually been trafficked to Cape Town.
Yeah. And then later you were trafficked to
Singapore as well.
Singapore?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of time, one day you're in this lifestyle. You're drugging, you're partying, prostitution. You find yourself on a beach in Gordons Bay.
Yes.
What happens?
Yeah. So a group of my friends, other prostitutes and drug dealers, we decide we're going to go to Gordons Bay to a chalet on the beach. And I just decided that I need to go for a walk by myself. Dungarees were still in fashion. And it was winter, so I had dungarees on, and I had a white T-shirt, and I just decided to go walk on the beach. And my mom was a Christian. She grew up in a convent, actually. And she used to talk about God, but we never went to church or anything like that. And I just sat there and, like, in a moment, I just said to God, I don't know what I said, actually, to be honest with you, but I was like, in my spirit, I was crying out to God because I just couldn't take that life anymore. There was nothing left of me. And in that moment, the Holy Spirit just came on top of me, and God was saying things to me like, I love you. You're so precious to me. Don't you know who you are? What you're doing is not what I have for you. Who you are now is not who I created you to be. Wow. And I was just crying and crying and crying and crying like I had never cried in my life before. And the next minute I was like looking at the ocean, and I just felt this intense urge to go dunk in the water. Now, if anybody knows Cape Town water, in the middle of winter, you don't do that. Not with dungarees on.
And a white shirt.
Yeah, well, I was alone, it's okay. And anyway, so I walked into this water, and it was like, in that moment, I felt like I needed to wash away every ounce of filth that was on my body. So and I didn't know Jesus. I didn't know anything about baptism. I didn't know anything about God really up until that point. And I walked into the water, and I dunked backwards into the water. And when I came up, it was like I was new, Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's beautiful. Come on. So you had a God encounter.
Absolutely.
With a God you hardly even knew, and He started speaking life and hope and healing into you. Obviously, you go back to your friends, and you are sopping, and they look at, and they're drugging, and they're looking at
Girl,
you.
You're tripping.
They're looking at you like you're crazy. Obviously, there was a journey that took place to you eventually coming out. It didn't happen overnight.
Absolutely
but
not.
It was the start. And there was a journey to coming out of the lifestyle of prostitution and getting healing and wholeness and restoration.
Yes.
And I mean, you're many years on the other side of that now.
Yes.
I have a question now, that how is God using your story, your pain, your past for you to now see others and to help others?
Well, going into that, firstly, so one day I was sitting at work, and the next minute I get a phone call from this lady I didn't know from a bar of soap. And she's like, "Hi, I'm phoning you. I'm from a place called Cherished, and this is what we do." And I was like, how does this woman know me? It's like, right. So Trish actually had been on a Red Frogs camp, and she was talking to Tumi, and Tumi asked her if she wants to join Cherished. And Trish said, well, actually, I think there's someone else that would probably be better suited for the job. And so she phoned me. And, I'd been on mission trips. I'd been on, in church for 16 years at that stage. And, but nothing felt like it was justifying the pain and suffering that I had been through. And so when they phoned, I was like, well, maybe this is it. And I joined, and,
So there's many ladies here who don't know what Cherished is.
Sorry. So Cherished is a place, not a place, it's a group of ladies, and we minister to women in the sex industry. So we go into brothels, we go into strip clubs, and we invite ladies to dinners, we have Christmas parties and all of that. And Yeah, and like one of the biggest things was, you know, in that moment, like by that time I had cleaned up pretty nicely. I was a good Christian girl and didn't do too many bad things. I tried, no. And no, I was pretty cleaned up. And going into these places and being with these women, you know, God showed me that I had to love my old self in order to be able to love these ladies.
Very powerful, very powerful. Yeah, because I think we think, you know, we don't integrate that into who we are.
Yeah.
We want to box it in a corner
Yeah.
and pretend it never happened.
Yeah.
But going into those places forces you back to face
Who
your
you were.
past,
Yeah.
who you were,
Yeah.
and integrate it into yourself, into a whole new, healed, whole, restored person on the
Absolutely.
other side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sammy, I want to say your story and your pain has not been wasted.
Yeah.
My next conversation this evening will be with Barbara, who is a lady of great integrity and wisdom that I get the honor of speaking to. Barbara's just coming up. All right, let's stand to our feet. So Barbara and James are also at our Edenvale campus, and I've grown to love Barbara so much over the last 2 years. So privileged, you know, as we've merged with Edenvale and we have our new campus. I've been so blessed by the amazing women that we've got to meet and be exposed to. You know, it's just, God has done so much in me through the process. And Barbara, we love you. We love you and James, Byron, and I love you so dearly. I've learned so much from your life and from your example already. And we're going to share a bit of your story with everyone here. So thank you for joining me. So I'm going to summarize a little bit of your story because there's a few years. All right, so 33 years ago, you went into hospital for a relatively minor procedure. But the doctor advised you that he could no longer do the surgery because you had an infection. But he sort of said, you know, don't worry about it. Go home. And, you know, maybe in a few days you'll be able to come back for the surgery. But 3 days later, he phones you with devastating news. He says to you, Barbara, says to your husband, and you need to get here immediately. Over to you.
Well, you'll find out that I've worked for hospice a very long time. But one of the courses we teach is how to break bad news. And he did everything that you shouldn't do. James and I sitting thinking, well, we were expecting something not quite right because why has he called us in? I mean, so he comes in and suddenly he finds the lights up there extremely interesting. And so he says, you know, when I saw that infection, not for one moment did I expect you at your age to have cancer. And I can remember distinctly James's gasp, this big, you know. And he started saying that I needed radical surgery, I needed treatment, it would be life-changing, yes. And we were devastated.
So in that devastation, you go home and a friend pitches up and literally shakes you to your senses.
Because I grew up with a Jewish father and Dutch Reformed mother, but she was the black sheep of the family. Everybody else was Christian, and she didn't go to church, and she'd married a Jew, which was rather different in those days. It's about 80 years ago that she married him. And so I didn't know about all this. but because my maiden name was Sachs, and more Jewish you don't get. And going to a school where there was about 98% Jewish, I was part of the other 2%. And my friends were all Jewish. But the mothers would pick up that I wasn't Jewish. And I got quite a complex because they would say, so, why hasn't your mother Magad? And I would have to go into this long story that she wasn't going to, and we were quite comfortable. So I promised myself that I would marry or become Magad if I married a Jewish guy, and if I married a Christian guy, I would be confirmed. So the day that James put the ring on my finger was the day that I started confirmation classes. So
The friend comes to your house.
I'd inherited James's being Presbyterian. And that's really, I'm ashamed to say that because my children, because I had never been to a church camp or any of the sessions that the church groups had, youth on a Friday. I didn't have any of that. I felt actually left out. So my children were going to have everything that I didn't have. So every church camp, every nativity play, everything, they definitely went to. So I sat on the church bench, but I didn't know who Jesus was. I actually listened. I mean, in my home growing up, Jesus, was a swear word. My dad didn't know any better. And he said that there was a Jesus, but he was one of the prophets. And the Bible was written for very simple people. So to explain the uneducated. So obviously, this rubs off on you. It does. Your parents have an impact on you. And my mother had a very strong faith in God. We never discussed Jesus. But I never, ever doubted there wasn't a God. But that was as far as it went. And my friend Linda arrives. And she was short and spiky hair and quite radical. And she grabs hold of me and she took me by both arms and she started shaking me. And she said, I hear you might die. So I said to her, apparently so. So she said, so where are you going to go? So I said, well, I hope I'm going to go to heaven. And she immediately said, you're not. You're not. So naturally the conversation continued correctly that if you're not sure of your salvation, you definitely aren't saved. So she frightened me or shook me into the kingdom.
And aren't we glad she did?
And within 2 weeks, she had me as a tongue-talking Christian. Right through having treatment before the radical surgery, major radical surgery. I was so aware of people starting to pray for me. She had put out to all her Christian groups because she really was well known. And but I just felt this undergirding, amazing support.
Yeah, it's
amazing.
amazing.
I mean, it was incredible.
So, you get shaken in fear to give your life to Christ. You go, you have, but you really do feel it was a significant, life-changing moment. You then go and have this radical surgery. As you come out of surgery, you share the story of the fact that your boss, whom you'd worked in that company for 19 years, walks into your surgery. You still have pipes everywhere. And he basically says to you, take some time off of work and don't come back.
So, you know, I studied and worked, and I thought that I was quite somebody. I was chair lady of the PTA, and I was secretary of the Scouts, and I was this, that, and the other. Suddenly I didn't have a job, so I wasn't the kingpin in the little company. James told me to back off from all these committees that I was in, and I didn't know who I was. I mean, I really didn't know who I was.
And so you're now recovering from a radical surgery. You have no job after 19 years of working yourself into the most significant role in the company, basically making it work. And then, so you have no job, and James says to you, let's take 2 years and recover. Don't do anything. I don't want you to be involved anywhere. I don't want you to do anything. One day, 3 months after your surgery, you're sitting in a church service.
And the administrator of hospice was giving a 2-part lecture on hospice and everything. And it talked to my heart. It absolutely talked. Now, remember, I'm a new Christian. So immediately I went home and I prayed and I prayed, and I knew that this was where God wanted me. So I couldn't wait for the next Sunday night to tell Doug Crawford that I'm the answer to his prayers. To my amazement, he said, because he had mentioned that they had nobody to do their books. And I said, no, I'll come. You know, I'm qualified to do all this. So he says, he had mentioned that the first week, so now I'm ready. So I said, now I'm here, ready. And he said, during the course of this week, we actually found somebody. And I was devastated. I thought, oh dear, I'm obviously not practiced enough to hear from God, so I got it wrong. So I thought, well, I better go home and reassess this. So, and the very next morning, I remember James had flu or something, and he was at home. The phone goes at 5 to 8 in the morning, and it was Doug Crawford. So, because he still said, but give me your number anyway, just, you know, it was like an afterthought. Doug Crawford, 5 to 8, can you come now? So I said, I'm not dressed. So he says, oh, I haven't got my makeup on, says I. Very important. So he said, no, you've really got to come now. We've got the board here. And the gentleman that I thought was going to do the books, actually, he's an auditor. And so he needs somebody that can do the hands-on work, and he'll work with you. But we have to interview you. So I went down as fast as I could, and they interviewed me. And yes, I started working as a volunteer for the 2 years that I promised James that I wouldn't work.
No salary, you weren't working.
No, I wasn't working. Two mornings, I had young children, so obviously, and I was always working half day, getting a full day salary, but I was, and 2 and then 3 days. And after 2 years, they asked me onto the staff. By the time my daughter was in matric, she's the youngest, they asked me to be the finance manager and admin. And I think 7 years after that, they asked me to be the CEO. Yeah. I just have to backtrack that right at the start, just as I started to volunteer at hospice, I was being mentored by a Christian lady who seemed to do everything right, and she had a passion for children. She had a passion for rehabilitating alcoholics and drug addicts. She had a passion for this and a passion for that. And now I've started volunteering at hospice, and I loved it, but I felt inadequate. So I went into the garden, and I prayed out aloud, and I said, God, I feel so inadequate. Here I'm working at hospice, but, you know, my friend is doing so much. And I heard God say audibly to me, you are exactly where I want you to be.
Yeah. So Barbara won't tell you this, but out of her own cancer, into being jobless, God orchestrated her life, that she was there for 26 years, I think we worked out. 23 years, sorry, my notes weren't there. But when she started, there were 16 staff members at hospice. By the time Barbara left, there were 140 staff members and 350 volunteers at hospice.
The amazing thing is that if you're doing the right thing and it's God's wish, I mean, please, this is not about me, this is God. Please understand, I'm really, but I got the opportunity to represent on behalf of hospice in America 5 times. To go to Capitol Hill, it was Al Gore that I had a meeting with. To present a paper at the university in Italy. Things that I would never, ever have thought in my little world that anything like this could possibly happen. As chairperson of the National Hospice concurrently, and all sorts of amazing things. And every time I sat, I used to think, but God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only God.
Yeah, only
That's
God.
it.
We want to thank you for your life. We want to thank you for your faithfulness. We want to thank you for using your story and helping so many other people. Come on, let's give it up for Barbara. Cass is also part of our staff team. Welcome, Cass. She's also part of our staff team. We love her too, but she is a powerful leader, an anointed leader, a mighty woman that I get the privilege of interviewing. Thanks, Cass. Cass did a year of your life here at Thrive Church last year, and this is her first year on staff as well. She's been part of Thrive Church for 7 years, and thank you for joining me.
Awesome.
So, Cass, at 16, you found yourself in a really dark place. Talk to us about what led to you being in that terrible space.
Awesome. So at 16, I was bullied on a severe scale to the fact that I became an outcast in my social community, to the fact that I was not like the other teenagers in my grade. I wasn't like the other teenagers. I didn't want to take drugs. I didn't want to go drinking. I didn't want to go to the clubs when I was under 18. That wasn't what I had planned for my life. And because I had just become a Christian, I was quite strong in Christ, and a lot of people in my school didn't agree with that. And there was a specific person in the school that was very influential over the people in our school. And the bullying started basically in cyberbullying. And I'll still remember the first message he ever sent me was, "I'll make you hate your life so much that you won't want to live." And that was the first thing, how it started, and that it started with cyberbullying until other people joined in and I got messages from other people. Then it went to verbal bullying, where I couldn't actually go to a class without someone saying something nasty, without someone making a remark about me, without someone saying something ugly that was just unnecessary, until it got actually to physical, where I would be sitting on my own. I had no friends. I lost all my friends, and they threw rugby balls at me. They had good aim, so they pretty much hit me. They were in the sports team. I would go up the stairs just to try to get to your class, and there would be marks. They would push me. They would shove me. They didn't care about how I felt. That wasn't their concern. And then the cyberbullying carried on, where most of the school actually joined in on it, until the fact that they made a YouTube video where over 1,000 people saw them mocking me, who I was, my beliefs, and telling me that the world would be better without me. And I remember this one time I was in a class and the whole class was going on saying nasty things, and the teacher on his phone didn't actually care what was happening. And I looked at the one boy and I said, "What more do you want? How much more pain do you want to cause me?" And he said, "Isn't it obvious? We're just waiting for you to kill yourself." And that was it just consistently, every day something similar, but worse. Every day it just increased.
And so it went on and on and
yeah.
on. So obviously, I mean, with this consistent messaging, and I just want to say, like, kids can be cruel. Teens can be cruel, and try as far as possible, keep open communication with your children. Check their phones. You need to know where they are at so that you can help them and get them out of those situations. The last straw for you, Cass, was you went to the principal. You escalated this. This wasn't for lack of escalating it. You went to the principal. You reported this cyberbullying. And what was the response?
So yeah, I went to the principal because it had got too far, and I explained everything that had happened, and her answer to me was, "The video and the messages weren't sent on school grounds. I cannot help you." And that was the end for me. That was how, if she is not going to help me, if the principal of the school will not help me, I'm not going to get out of this. I can't get out of this.
Yeah. And so you actually, and this is the first time Cass is actually sharing this, you actually went so far as to attempt suicide. Talk to us about what stopped you and what you had thought in your mind at that time.
Yeah, so going to the principal happened about a week before that, and eventually I made the decision that this was the only answer, that this is the only way out. The pain that my heart is feeling, I can't do it anymore. And I made the decision because I knew that this would take the pain away. It might cause a little bit of a pain, but it would take it away. And sorry. I remember the day.
It's okay. Give you a moment. We'll give you a moment.
I remember the day so clearly when I made the decision in my heart, and my parents were actually going to a family bra, and I acted sick. I wasn't feeling well, knowing the decision I was going to end my life that day. And I said goodbye to them, told them I loved them, knowing that was the last time I'd see my parents. And I remember breaking glass, and I tried to slit my wrists all the way up. And to this day, I can still not understand when I try to take that glass to my arm. It felt as if you think of two magnets on the opposite side, as if my arms literally repelled against each other. And no matter how hard I tried, because I got so angry, this is the only answer. Why would you stop me? No one can stop me. I haven't told anyone because I don't want anyone to stop me. And I kept hearing this voice saying, "This isn't the answer. This isn't the answer. This isn't the answer." And I remember laying there in tears, crying because I was so angry. What more? How much longer? What do you do when God says yes and no to something? What do you do when you have to accept something you can't understand? What do you do when you go completely off course on the plan you thought you had for your life? And I just thought, why am I so lucky that something is stopping me? And in that moment, obviously, I didn't know, but I knew. Now I know that it was God. And God's Holy Spirit literally pulling my arms away from each other, keeping my arms from not killing myself.
Yeah, so, I mean, that moment was miraculous.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that you just could not do it, that your arms felt like they were moving apart.
Yeah.
I just want to stop for a moment, and I want to say that John 10:10 says that Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But God has come to give life and life abundantly. And there was a full-out plan for your life, and Satan was coming to steal, kill, and destroy that. And we are so grateful that God came to give life and life in abundance. Talk to us about how you came from that suicidal place to the mighty woman of God that you are here today. How did you get there?
Awesome. So, if you think of suicide, and I'll explain it like this, you think of it as picking a flower. And you pick the flower not realizing that the stems and the root grow deep. So you survive your suicide, but there's stuff you have to deal with. There's roots that are stuck in, and you have to dig them out.
Yeah, very good.
And sometimes you think, why doesn't God change my circumstance? Why doesn't He change? Why doesn't He take me out of this dark, horrible place? And what I realized in that is that God was shaping my character. He was shaping my inner strength. He was shaping my integrity, because He knew those were qualities that I would need forever. Those were qualities that were priceless to Him. And through that, I learned wisdom. I learned strength. I learned integrity. I learned maturity that was purposeful for my calling He had on my life. There's purpose in our pain.
Yeah.
And in that, I knew that I couldn't do this alone. I didn't have the strength to do this alone. And even though no one knew that what I tried to do, no one knew I tried to commit suicide, but they saw my brokenness. My family never left my side. They never stopped holding my hand. They never stopped telling me how much they love me. They never stopped affirming who I was to them. They never stopped caring. I made godly friendships. I had lost all my friends, but it was in community that I found godly friendships that said, no matter what you go through, no matter if you're outcast or you're the most popular person, we're standing by you. We're not leaving you. When you're going through something tough, we're praying for you. We're not leaving you alone. I connected to Christ, and a scripture that really encouraged me throughout my journey of recovering from a suicide is Romans 8 verse 31, and it says, she who kneels before God can stand against anyone. And daily I knew that if I kneel before God, if I surrendered to Him, if I came humbly and thankfully for what He had already done in my life, I could go and stand against anyone. And then I started getting mentoring from, of course, the most mighty Pastor Steve. And every Sunday, he sat me in that guest coffee bar and he gave me a new scripture and he said, memorize it. And he didn't let me off the hook, because the next week he said, what does the scripture say? Like Pastor Steve does, of course. So I was connected to community. I had a family that stood around me, and they just always took me through each step by step, through Christ, through community, through friendships, through family. They took me step by step, and I started healing and recovering from it.
Yeah, really awesome. Faith, family, community. Got you through that. In closing, Cass, how have you been able to help others and care for others meaningfully because of the things that you've been through?
So I want to say, first of all, I think sometimes when we go through something, the first thing we want to say is, why me? But why me? I haven't done anything wrong. And the thing is sometimes the worst things happen to the best people. But what I realized through my story is sometimes some people don't need you to preach a sermon, but they need you to live it. They need you to live it out in your life. They need you to show how you got through it. And now, because of what I've been through, I can speak into our kids' lives. I can every Sunday say that you're loved. You're worthy. You're more than anything you can imagine. I can speak into youth. Suicidal rates are the highest now.
Yeah.
I can tell them there's a way out. This isn't the answer.
Yeah.
As much as it feels, this isn't the answer. I can show hope to other people. Our world is hopeless. But we don't need to show light to people we know, but we show light to other people. Show compassion.
Yeah.
Don't just see random numbers. See people's stories.
Yes.
See who they are. Show them that there's hope in the world. Show them that there's light. Show them that there is another choice. That there's always a choice to grow. There's always a choice to love like you've never loved before. We're here for people. And the more we show compassion, the better the world gets.
Yeah.
And in that we can speak
so
life.
true.
This message was recorded live at Thrive Church. We hope that it inspired you to move towards Jesus.